Okay, and now we'll listen to Ronni Elken Lindsgaard talking about how not to store your password.
Okay, hi. This presentation is gonna be about a new method in order to manage your passwords. So hopefully, when you all leave here, you will go out and think about how not to do it. And how I think you should not do it is by having your password stored in some sort of database, either online or offline. So I have a couple of things on the program. First, I'm gonna present to you why having your password stored anywhere is a liability. And then I'm gonna present to you a method how you can generate passwords that are secure on the fly, so you never have to store them ever again. All you need to do is remember a few credentials that you type in, and then you generate the password. Then thirdly, I'm gonna present to you my own work and also what other people have done in this field. It's a very, very small field, and it doesn't have, for some odd reason, it doesn't have very much. There's not many people who actually work with this, and the only paper I've got on it is more than 12 years old, as you will see. So I differentiate between two types of password managers. There's online password managers and there's offline password managers. So, of course, they both give you a solution to a problem. That's why they're even used in the first place. Online password managers specifically have the strength that they're portable. You can access them anywhere. And within an organization, it's very easy to share passwords. For instance, LastPass makes you share passwords with other people. But then again, they're not on your machine. You don't actually command where they are. There's a liability in that if LastPass's database is compromised, which it has been proven to be, more or less, at least open or susceptible to attacks, where you can get other people's vaults. Maybe they're not, they're still encrypted, but maybe in 10 years the encryption will be broken, and then people will be able to access your passwords from then. Then there's, of course, offline password managers. They have mitigated the problem with regard to accessing a database. They have to actually infect your computer and be able to get your database out of that. Of course, you can also easily generate strong passwords. For instance, we have KeePass, which is one of the most commonly known, I think, at least in my world. But then again, there's still a problem with them, because you have one key to the kingdom, that if you manage to somehow phish or otherwise get the password out of, if I manage to get the password out of one of you, I can more or less get your entire database. And that's not even necessary some of the time. We saw for a little while ago the Keybase bug, where a XML file was accidentally saved to disk unencrypted with the entire database store. So there's also problems there. It's a liability that to have your passwords floating around in some sort of file. So let's try to make things better. These are the areas that I focus on when I want to have a password manager. First of all, it should be easy to create secure passwords, or at least manage them. Both LastPass and OnePass and KeePass, etc., has an ability where you can create a very high entropy password very easily. You just click on a button and then it takes something from your random file or something. It should be configurable. You should be able to specify how many characters would I like, which types of characters should I use, because not because it should be that way, but because usually you use passwords on web pages, and web pages suck with regard to password rules. So there are characters you cannot use. There's a limit to which types of characters you should have as a minimum. There's even some places where you can have a maximum size on your password, and so forth. Thirdly, it should be easy to use and manage, because you use passwords every day. The first thing I do when I open my computer is use 2 passwords, one for my encrypted hard disk and one for actually logging in. And that's just starting the day, and then everything else is always also password protected. So it should be easy to get your passwords out of it. And then it should also be shareable, because you want to be able to share passwords within an organization. You want to be able to, if you have a service running outside that more people in the organization, for instance, the sysadmin department or development department, should be able to access, then you need to share the passwords. And then, fifthly, it should not be stored. There should be no trace of your passwords when you don't actually use them. So let's look at how we actually do this. So let's first talk about what is a secure password. There are many opinions on what compromises a secure password. It would have been a great place to have the XKCD drawing here, but I'd rather give you a couple of references that you can read, because they're all quite interesting actually. So high entropy. More or less everyone agree on that high entropy is a must. You need to have a rather long password. You should preferably use both small and large letters. You should use numbers, special characters, etc. So one of it's not a new thing, but one of the things that are advised, and what the XKCD comic that I talked about earlier mentions, is having some sort of passphrase that you type in, because it's a very long sentence and password. So you have high entropy in the sense that it's very long, so the search space in order to break it becomes very long. But then again, you have the problem that it's not necessarily that good, because Bruce Schneier, he argues, for instance, that the password breakers are actually onto this method, so they have methods in order to provide dictionary attacks that actually combines these very cleverly in order to break passwords. So Bruce Schneier has proposed another scheme. He calls it the Bruce Schneier scheme. It's from 2008 actually, where you instead take something like a sentence, and then you make it into something that you understand yourself. For example, so this is a sentence that's not too long to remember. And yeah, that might also be a good idea, but then again, it's still not random. It's still susceptible to attacks. If somebody who wants to hack you can know enough about you, then they can maybe figure out your schemes on how you do it. And it's better than password with an @ sign, but it's still not very good. And well, it might be good, and it's still usable. So, but yeah. And then Troy Hunt, he argues that a password should be too complex to remember. He is very fond of one password, and I understand why. And I'm really into the same level as Troy Hunt is, but I want to add that it should not only be too complex to remember, it should also be something that you don't even know, because you don't even need to know your password. You just need to know how to generate your password. So let's look at how we do it. I suppose that everyone knows MD5 sum. Is actually how I used to make user login systems back in the days when I was young and played around with PHP and MySQL. I've come far away since then. So what we have here is just a hashed value of natural born hacker, the string natural born hacker. And we're going to use this hash, and we're going to use a hash function to generate a password. So how we do it is that we have the hash as we had before. I've turned it down a bit because it's not really necessary to have it longer than this in order to make a point. And then I have some sort of alphabet. This is a predefined alphabet consisting of a series of characters that I want to use for my password. So the longer the alphabet is, the more characters the generated password will be able to consist of. But here I've just used 16 characters for simplicity purposes. So what I do is that I take each of these characters and use it as a number, and in this alphabet, and generate a new string from that. So the first one is A. It's a 0, so we put in A. The second one is a 4, then we find the fourth letter, or the first fourth element, and so forth, until we have generated a random string. Or it's not a random string, it's deterministically created by the hash, and the hash has the great ability that it's not referable, so you can't see what it's actually been made of. You can just see that it's something that looks, or should look, quite random. Then next, we don't just want, moreover, we also like to have some sort of, we don't want to reuse our passwords all the time. So this this is a simple method in order to create a password, but you would also like to have different passwords for different sites, for instance. So what we do is we add some sort of context. In this instance, this is a very simplified instance, but then we just append the context to the password. So for instance, if I choose the context bornhack.dk, I have an account at Bornhack, and I use the password natural born hacker. Then I get out from the system. I can get out a very, very long passphrase or a password, and if I use it on GitHub and still keep my password natural born hacker, I get a whole other string, which is a whole other password. So, and you can see this consists of small letters, large letters, it's characters, and it's special numbers and special characters, and it's 32 characters wide as well. So this, I would say, has a very high entropy. Actually, what I've done also, because there is, when choosing letters out of the alphabet, there is a possible selection bias. I actually sometimes skip one of the characters in the actual created hash, such that because the index is too high, then I just skip it. So there's a chance that you can't even, from this, even though you know how to reverse this function, you don't even get the correct hash when you're done. So so that's very hard to force. So furthermore, I also add a session key. The session key I use for the hash function seed. So because when we have a hash function, we want to seed it properly. But it can also be used for other purposes. For instance, you can, if I want to save some configuration, I might have an alphabet for a website that doesn't allow special characters. Then I remove those characters from the alphabet, and then I save that I've removed these characters, so I don't need to type or remember that once again. And the session key could be used to unlock this information, so it's not just lying around somewhere. It's of course some liability, because then you store something again, and then it's a liability. But it's better to just have, then the attacker would be able to get a recipe on how to configure it, but it still wouldn't have the actual keys that he needs. Furthermore, it also mitigates shoulder surfing, where somebody physically can view what you type in on your machine when you log in, and in that sense can figure out what your password is. So it's not a foolproof way, but it's definitely better than nothing. So there are various implementations of this method. The first one that's been proposed, and I've first learned about this paper in the spring. So, and funnily enough, I found somebody at this place that actually has been using this. So it's a Stanford paper from 2004. It presents a browser plugin and basically the same method where you choose a hash, but it does not provide it does not have the same session key as I've provided, and also it's very old, and it's very much it relates to internet security and browser plugins, and there's been a lot happening since 2004. So what they did back then was they just accessed an event manager and like grabbed whenever somebody typed in something into a web page. But then the web page, if it knew what you were doing, it would still be able to access your actual password key. So I've figured out a way to circumvent this and escape the DOM entirely. I have a proof of concept of that, but that is a topic for another talk, because I've not gotten that far with the rest of the process. So, and finally, it does not use special characters. It's only small letters, large letters, and numbers. But I guess it's still fine. It's still better than nothing, at least. Then there's the system that I based my stuff on. It's an old student friend of mine, Johan Brink, who made this in 2009. He made a proof of concept and an actual implementation, but it didn't get stable. It only consisted of small letters and numbers, and it used a QPass function. So, and the way it did it generated a 16-character password with small letters and numbers. It's still better than nothing, and still better than what most of people are doing, since it's 16 characters. But it had some other problems, and it used the same method for as event manipulation as the PWD hash. So it's not really usable, and it's possible to attack it. And that's also the reason why I actually started implementing it myself and extending this. Furthermore, there's a newer version that uses almost the same solution that I do. It's called One Shall Pass. It's written by Maxwell Krohn, who is fairly known around. It's kept quite up to date. A month or two ago, when I started preparing for this talk, I looked at his website and found out that he had updated with a new system and how to generate the passwords that looks very much like mine. He also uses PBKDF in order to as a hash function. So it's a very interesting project, but he only focuses on providing a simple standalone web page, where my final purpose is to generate a browser plugin, because you can mitigate some attacks by implementing in the browser directly, and you can also use make command line clients, etc. So let me introduce to you R&D phrase improved. Right now, it's I have released the first alpha version. There's gonna be at least one more. I found some stuff that's on the to-do list. I use PBKDF2 for hashing. I use the Web Crypto API to do that because while working on this, the W3C was so kind to actually make a standard for it and get it into the various browsers. It provides a way to configure the characters that you use. You can even it defaults with the four basic character types: minuscule letters, large letters, numbers, and special characters. But if you know how to do it, the library supports that you add other stuff. It could be Unicode letters or something. I'd suppose if the website where you want to enter it actually allows it. So it also provides a way to control which kinds of characters are there or how many, because there are places where you need to have a minimum of two small letters and two large letters or something. So you can say the password that is generated should contain at least this, and it will provide a way in order to give you exactly a password that is valid for your purpose. And you can also control the size of the password. You cannot say I want a password that is specifically this size because of how the algorithm works. But you can say I want a password that is approximately 32 characters long. I want one that is approximately 42 characters long, etc. And it also provides a means in order to reuse your credentials. So whenever you have to, there are websites or there are mechanisms where you're forced to change your passwords every 1 month or 3 months or whatever. So you can still use the same passwords that you use every day, and all you need to do is just remember a little number, which is a version. And what it does is it just takes up how many rounds the hash function will do, and then it will create a new password every time instead. So this is the user interface. It's I think that it's fairly simple, but for someone who's who comes from the outside, it might not be that very simple. So there's this is a website where you can go in R&D on R&D phrase. There's a link later in the slides. So you just enter a seed. This is the seed that you use for all your purposes. So it might be correct horse battery stable. It's a fine passphrase. It's probably not a good idea, since this is the example that's been put on the website. So if I were someone who wanted to try to figure out your password, that's probably the first thing I would try. Then you have some password which you type in every time that you need to do something. The web page right now resets the password field every time that you go away from the tab, such that nobody can just come along and grab your passwords as long as you tab out. And then you use some sort of URI or some place that you want. For instance, this is the domain of where I've grabbed it from. So and then when you type in here, stuff will start to happen here, which is the hash, which is the resulting password, where you then can get a very long string. And it's also been cut down, so it's very, very long, but it's not viewable. But when you activate this field, then it will select everything, such that people around you cannot see the password actually. There's a legacy mode button, which is just using the original R&D phrase implementation. It's just because Johan asked me to, and I think it's a very good idea. And so yeah, until this one reaches 1.00, actually, I'll be keeping this. This is the version button. You can just increment this. For instance, if you have to change your password every 30 days, you can just type in the day of the month or the month that we're in right now, and we can specify some sort of size. Furthermore, there's a checkbox that can be unchecked if you want to use something else than the defaults. Defaults are just having one character of each character type, and you can specify the alphabet, the minimum occurrence, and the maximum occurrence if you want one. And there's of course more down here. I just cut it out. So, of course, there's a lot of active attacks that can be made on this system. There's key logging. There's other sorts of attacks that that it's still vulnerable to. But every other password manager is vulnerable to the same attacks. The only difference is that there's no storage. There's no database that can be grabbed and possibly broken at some point. And I think that's checking off a mark. That's a good thing, at least. So yeah, I believe that that this is a way to generate secure passwords. You cannot find out the original password by if you actually manage to figure out if for LinkedIn, for example, which has just been, or the hack was several years ago, but I just saw it in the news. Again, because they finally admitted that they lost the passwords. Then, even though that they're compromised and they can view the actual password, they cannot view my password. They can just view a password, and I've changed it a long time since then. So, and even though I maybe use the same password different places, or I use the same credentials to generate the password, it's never the same password, because they will never be able to get into my Gmail account, my GitHub account, or anywhere else. It's configurable. I can when Apple tells me that I cannot have this character in my password, then I can just remove it from the alphabet when I generate it. So. And then I just need to remember to remove that special character every time. That's an annoyance right now, but at some point I'll figure out a way to or find the time to actually implement some sort of local storage or similar. I find it easy to use. I use it every day. I dog feed it, and and I actually find it so easy. So even though I use LastPass, I generate the passwords in here, store them in LastPass, because then I know how to actually find them. It's shareable. You can find something easy, 1, 2, 3, 4, for instance, as you saw. That's what people who need to share passwords uses anyway. So now you just have a way to generate it very, very securely. And there's no storage. It doesn't get stored anywhere. It might be stored in memory in the browser and that kind of thing, but right now that's pretty far. That's not really the problem, I think, right now. So yeah, if you'd like to read more, there's a website. I might not have. It might not be. The S thing might not be active right now, because I'm really bad at system administration, and I need to renew my Let's Encrypt certificate. There's a GitHub account where you can see all where you can see the source. There's also several side projects and stuff on there. You're very welcome to look at my code, because I need somebody to review this at some point. This has just been me hacking on it, basically, so there might be things, and either way it would be really nice to discuss what I've actually done. And then I have also provided a roadmap on my personal blog, where you can read something about what's actually to come, and this what am I planning on doing. And yes, that's the end. Any questions? Yes? I would advise you to, this is a standalone application, so I would advise you to download the source code and run this on your local host.
So it's a JavaScript application.
It's a JavaScript application. Everything is in JavaScript.
So it doesn't do a round trip even though I'm going to this URL, right? So everything happens locally at my.
Everything happens at your browser. There's no communication, no storage, or anything on a web server. It's a static web page.
Yeah. How close are you to a browser plugin?
To a browser plugin, I have a proof of code with the ideas, but I don't have the manpower to make the plugin. I have a lot of ideas. I know especially what I need to do, but I just haven't had the time yet. I've been focusing on getting the library done so that it's very easy to create a Node.js application for client side or for anything else, because that's really alpha omega, I think. And then until then, I just have the proof of concept, and it's good enough for me to work on. It's gonna take a while unless I get some funding and some spare time to actually do it. Unless other people will help me, I'd be happy to advise people on how to start doing this and discuss with people. Yes.
Have you thought about tying it in with hardware? Maybe the session key could be on a separate platform.
Yes, I have. I have thought of, for instance, you could have there's YubiKey, which allows you to enter a fixed string each time. So that would be a very, very good place to locate your your session key, because then you don't even know it yourself.
I think passwords often start with making a decision, is this a password where you actually need security at all? I mean, my login for Bornhack is pretty much my email and my daughter's first name, the small letters. And I don't give a shit if all of the audience know my password for that, and Bornhack knows that password. And that password isn't useful in any kind of relation where it could be misused in the end.
Yeah.
So
Why is the same password on other websites?
I do use that password on a few other websites where I don't give a shit. So I focus on that Bornhack's website. I don't know you guys. I don't know, is that password stored in clear text anyway? Is it,
The Bornhack password.
what's that?
What are you asking? Is the Bornhack password
Yeah,
stored in clear text?
I don't know. I don't know
Yes, you don't know.
my password anyway.
Yeah, and
So using a stronger password that I would use like on a few other services, like on a computer. I wouldn't use that on a website.
yeah.
And what could be misused? Somebody else could use my login ID and pay you some money using their own credit cards. In the end, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's true, but that's your personal preference, and
So, yeah.
Godspeed with that.
And
Um,
how I manage my password, if I would create a password right now that I would be sure I would remember, I would say DA
yeah.
from that sign over there, DADA, VEUOTOPO, FE2CEG, and the year.
But the thing is, you can still use that. That's the entire idea, that you take something that you can remember very easily. So and you say you use the last name of your daughter or something, and then you type that in as your password, and then you generate something which is very high entropy in the end instead. So you can keep on using the same thing. So you have one password that is for bulk sites. You just put it through a grinder, basically. You just put it through this operation, and then you get something very secure. So you still have, even though you don't really care about it, you still have a strong password.
I mean, who can you trust? I mean,
Who you can trust? That's exactly the point. You cannot even trust. Yeah, you cannot even trust websites. You cannot trust them to keep your password secure. You cannot trust them to keep it hashed or anything. You saw the Adobe leak and stuff like that. So that's why you need to, even though you know your password, you have an entirely specific password than the one you actually enter into the system, that you submit to the system.
But I need at least 100 passwords.
But the
Passwords, I fully don't finish it.
yes, but the thing is that
I have 10 passwords that I need unique. Like one password for my banking system. That's only for using that banking system. And I remember that in one way. And one password for my computer. Mostly I log in using my fingerprint, which could be a problem if I had something stored on my computer that police would found and well, they have my fingerprint for my passport registration anyway.
but that is also fine. But it's not what this discussion is about. How to.
I can log in, create from like track a sentence mixed in with different persons and their names and numbers. It's a new word, 16 characters. I only use that password for that one operation. And that brings me down to like 8-10 passwords that I have to remember, which,
But do you have a question?
yeah. So probably, I just want to say, in the end, we can generate like a 16-character password that we think are secure, and we use that all the time. But we can have like key pass manager, communicating all over the time.
But
We can also use that.
yes, you can use that, and you are free to use that because you are master of your own destiny. And yeah,
But in the end, it's also about like
Ramon, do you have a question?
So probably to talk a bit about that. So the way of using this tool is to actually improve all your passwords.
It's a
Let's say for me, this website, I don't care about Bornhack, but what I did is actually provided with my credentials. So probably my credit card is saved someplace. So if I provide a very easy password like you did, probably somebody can hack into and take my credentials. So by being consistent and delivering strong passwords every single time, even though it's a crappy website or whatever it is, that's what this tool does. It just helps you create strong passwords no matter what website you're in.
exactly.
yeah, well, because that's how you could, yeah, like copy-pasting the generated
Let's take it outside and let's finish the talk if there's no more questions.
The talk was not about if you want to have a strong password, but only how to generate and not store.
Okay, thank you very much.